Hi everyone, in this video we're covering CSS transitions and explaining how they work. I've got in the browser here some examples we're going to cover and go one by one. And so with CSS transitions, really the thing that you want to understand is that CSS transitions help explain what happens in between. So it doesn't dictate a change or make a change happen in the browser. It's that in between part of how the change occurs. So, if you want your, a container to increase in size, or you want to rotate a container or a box on your website, you get to, with transitions, dictate, how that's going to happen, in what way. So, we're going to cover that today. Essentially, with the transition, the essential breakdown of how that looks is going to be the selector, followed by curly braces, and then the CSS rule of transition here, or the declaration more specifically. The declaration transition, colon, followed by four aspects that we're going to cover. So you have, with every transition, you have a property, you have duration, you have the timing function, and the delay. So, with normal selectors, you're just going to have, the name of the declaration followed by the value, or the property is typically, what you're putting the property as the declaration followed by, the value of it. So if we had like a normal selector, like a paragraph, you're naming the element, and then you say, oh, background color of red, like so. So this is a normal CSS selector. With a transition, you're going to be, and we're going to go over some examples, you're going to, explain. So let's say on a hover, explain, or actually with the element, instead you're just going to put, instead of background color, you're going to put transition followed by the value, whichever that is. So this is currently, it's just an extension of what we already know. We know, a CSS selector can start, a basic one is just the element, the name of the HTML element, followed by the declaration, and then the value. And in this case, with transitions, it's going to be transition as the declaration followed by 4 values that you can use. So, now to get started with that, we're going to go over an example. But first, before we do, a couple things. So we've talked about the property. That's going to be, the normal, property that you're using for a declaration in a normal CSS selector. You've got duration. How long is this transition going to last? And timing function is going to be these options below here. So there's different types of timing functions you can use. It's essentially, do you want, how fast do you want something to go, how slow, and, you want it to start slow, end slow, all of that. And so there's different types that you can use. You've got ease, which is, starting slow, speeding up, and then slowing down at the end. That's the default. If you don't specify a timing function, that's the default. Then you have linear. That's going to be constant, so constant speed through the whole animation. You've got ease in, ease out, so slow at the start, ease out, slow at the end. Ease in out, which is slow at the start, fast in the middle, and then slow at the end. And then cubic Bezier. We're not going to really go into that today, but that's a bit more custom. If you want to, customize the speed in more detail, you can do that. So you've got these timing functions of, essentially controlling how fast the transition occurs. Durations, how long. Timings, how fast. And then the delay is, do you want to pause this transition to occur at a certain point after a number of milliseconds or seconds. Duration and delay are both either in milliseconds, ms, or seconds, s. Delay generally, you can just leave it out if you don't need a delay. In this, tutorial, we're just going to put 0 milliseconds just so, show the structure that you can get used to. So we've covered the transition. Now let's go over some examples. So with the transition we have here, we have a box. We have really, if we go over to the HTML, we have 7 boxes that we're going to cover, all with a class of box and an idea box, and then I've styled with, just a general layout to make it look a little bit nicer. But you've got a class of box for all of the 7 boxes to look the same, and then you've got individual IDs, which we're going to target to trigger the transitions. So essentially how it's going to work is you're going to put the transition where the box, the idea of the box is, or whichever element you're putting. So the transition goes, and then you have the animation. So we're using a pseudo class of hover, and we're saying, hey, when you hover over box 1, change the color to a dark blue, and make the text keep the text, a little bit of a lighter blue. So on hover, we're changing the background color, and then on the actual box, we're specifying the transition. So you'll specify, an animation, and you're saying, hey, for the change in background color, which happens on hover, you want it to last for 800 milliseconds. You want to do ease, and so ease is going to start slow, speed up, and then slow down. And then we're going to say the delay is 0 milliseconds. And so if we go to the browser, we'll see that there. So we hover, and you'll see that transition take effect. So transition goes on the box element. It's not going to go in box 1 hover. It's going to go on the actual container, original container, not the pseudo class. And if we commented this out, you'll see the hover, but it's just a bit more jarring. So the transition helps ease it out a bit more, makes it a bit smoother. So you'll see there, and then if we add the transition, you'll see that slows down a bit more, and we can make this last longer, like 1800 milliseconds, and you see that it's even slower. So you've got that one. That's the first example. The next example here we have is text color. So same thing, we've got a hover effect. So whenever we're hovering over a box, we want to have that transition. So just always remember, transition is going to go on that just original element that you want to manipulate with the transition. You're just think of, which element do I want to apply a transition to? So transition is going to go there, and if you put it under hover, it's not going to work. So you want to make sure you put it under the element. We're going to change the color. You put the name of the element, the name of the declaration here. You're going to put the duration. We're saying ease, and then delay is 0 milliseconds. So it's going to start right away. And if we go to the second transition, you'll see that the text color changes, and it's a little bit smoother. If we add a delay of 1000 milliseconds, it's going to take a second before it starts. As you can see, there was a bit of a delay there. So that's that delay function. The next one we have is transform, scale, and rotate. So here we have on hover, we have transform, scale, and rotate. So transform is also used for animations, and you can use it in conjunction with transition. There's other types than just scale and rotate, which we're not going to go into more detail in this video, but just want to mention them here. You've got scale, rotate, translate, perspective, skew, and matrix. All of them in this example, we're just using scale and rotate. So on hover, we're applying a scale, so we're going to increase the size, and then we're going to rotate the box as well a little bit, 5 degrees. And then with the transition, we're specifying, hey, we want to what's the name of the declaration we're targeting? That's going to be transform, and we say 300 milliseconds. It's going to last. Ease in and out, so slow on the start and slow on the end, and then 0 milliseconds. There's no delay. And so if we go to the third box, we'll see that has scaled, increased in size a little bit, but also rotated, like so. So that's another common one you might want to use. And for all these transitions, the goal is to be subtle with it. So in future videos we can cover a bit more about real life examples. This is more just to get exposed to this idea of using a transition, which is that in between state that you're controlling, not the actual effect. You're just controlling what happens during the state, and so that's why that goes on that original box. and not, you know, on the effect, which is the hover effect with transform, etc. So let's go to the next one, opacity. So in this one, we're changing the opacity of the container, and we're applying that transition. And if we see that here, we'll see that the box gets a bit more faded out, like so. So that's opacity. Opacity could be good, you know, just to give that acknowledgement to a user or a viewer if they're, you know, going to click on a button, that acknowledgement that they've, you know, reached a point where they can click on it and successfully get to their destination, to the next, you know, next page. So that one could be a good one for there. Next we have box shadow. Again, same concept. You've got the hover effect, a pseudo class of hover, and then you've got, you know, the transition, which is, you know, the name of the property, the duration, the timing function, and the delay. And so if we go to the box shadow, you'll see that there's a shadow that slowly eases in. So again, the box shadow is on hover, and we're just dictating, you know, how do we want that shadow to occur on the element. The next one we have is height. Potentially you might want to control height. So if on hover, we're saying, hey, the original height is 100 pixels, and on hover we want to increase it to 400. Okay, so 100, so height, so increasing it to 400. And if we go without a transition, you'll see that the height just is a bit jarring, but it'll just immediately increase to 400. With transition, we're controlling how that height is going to occur, and we're saying, hey, we want to slowly ease into this height with 400 milliseconds, and you'll see it's a lot slower. And there's no delay. We can add a delay. We could say 2 seconds. It's the same, you know, same as 2 seconds or 2,000 milliseconds, and nothing happens, and then we'll see that height increase. And then the final example was just transitioning with all. So you also have the option to specify all. So all of the properties that you want to control, so such as on a hover, you want to control all of this. So the color changes, the transform, you want to scale, increase the size, and you want a box shadow. All of that can happen all at once. And if we go to the final box, you'll see that all happens. So color changes, you've got the shadow, you've got the scale size increase, all of that taking place.